Welcome back to The Truth About Cancer, a Global Quest. I am so glad that you joined us for this episode, but just in case you missed any of the last episode, here's a brief recap for you. I'm so thankful that during this episode you've been given an understanding of how you can heal cancer with clean electricity. It's an area of cancer prevention and treatment that is ignored by many professionals. Today you've seen the science and even the conventional medical community's approval of this technology and related devices due to the remarkable success in treating cancer, even the most challenging forms, including brain cancer. You've also seen that the information we covered concerning unique water contains vital keys to protecting the body from cancer and even healing a body that already has cancer. I hope it's a good incentive for you to make sure that you're consistently hydrated with clean water. You've seen how the sun emits ultraviolet light, which we are misled to believe is always bad for us, and that this mixes with the cholesterol in our skin to form vitamin D. Now, vitamin D is essential each day for your health and happiness, and has even been shown in multiple studies to drastically reduce the incidence of cancer. And again, you've witnessed the incredible power of combining superfoods, and that these rich nutrient supplies are glad to replenish your body each and every day, fueling you with nutrients that bring your body energy, aid in detoxification, strengthen the immune system, and equip the body to fight and fend off disease, including the vanquished foe, cancer. In this episode, we're going to travel to Mexico, just south of Tijuana, to learn about the Gerson therapy. We're going to take a trip to Houston, Texas, to the Brzezinski Clinic, and learn a little bit more from Dr. Brzezinski about the anti-neoplaston treatment that he has been so heavily persecuted for. But this episode begins with a trip across the Atlantic Ocean to Heerlen, Netherlands, for an interview that we did with Dr. Matthias Rath and Alexandra Niedzwiecki to discuss their protocol, which focuses on micronutrients to treat and beat cancer.
Our study shows that the underlying cause of majority of chronic diseases that develop over years or even decades, is the long-term deficiency of micronutrients, vitamins, trace elements, some amino acids, or other active components which cause dysfunction, cellular dysfunction, that with time turns into a diseased organ and disease.
Generally, micronutrients comprise vitamins, minerals, trace elements, certain amino acids, phytochemicals or phytobiologicals, as we call them, extracts from plants, small molecules that have a distinct metabolic role in the cells of the body. We are not looking at individual types of cancer, but we are looking at the key mechanism that unites them all. Cells, many cells, migrate within our body at any time. White blood cells, the police cells, they need to leave the bloodstream and enter, for example, the lung to fight pneumonia or any other organ. We have the egg cell in the monthly cycle of a woman that leaves the ovary and migrates into the fallopian tube. All these processes are extremely tightly controlled because they involve destruction of connective tissue, meaning destructing of tissue that surrounds the cell at that moment, mostly collagen or elastin. And this destruction happens with the help of an enzyme or a group of enzymes, which for simplicity we can call collagenases, collagen digesting enzymes. Under normal circumstances, this mechanism is tightly controlled. Cancer cells use exactly that mechanism, exactly the same group of enzymes to make their way through the body, to migrate through the body. First in their environment, we call this invasion, so the tumor grows and spreads, let's say, within the organ of the liver. And then ultimately to migrate into other organs, and we call that step metastasis. In each case, it's the same type of enzyme that paves the way of the cancer cell or cancer cells to migrate. It's probably like an expeditionary corps in the jungle with a machete. They pave their way through the jungle. And what we found out is that we can block these collagen digesting enzymes. And we understand today the key micronutrients that are able to do that. Not chemotherapy, natural substances that are able to block cancer cells from doing harm to the body. And therefore the approach we are going to talk about a little bit more is not related to an individual type of cancer like breast cancer or prostate cancer. It is a common mechanism that we understand today quite well, and that we have developed and tested a composition of micronutrients for in over 50 human cell lines. In other words, any commercial human cancer cell line that is available currently, we tested those micronutrients, and they are effective in each and every case.
Our studies have shown that this composition of micronutrients is effective in inhibiting key mechanisms that cancer cells or cancer uses in our body. So these micronutrients can inhibit proliferation or growth of cancer cells, inhibit formation of tumors. They can also inhibit the invasion of cancer cells in the tissue. They are effective in inhibiting metastasis. We tested in several cases the metastasis can be inhibited by 70 up to 80%. And also they are effective in inhibiting formation of new blood vessels that feed the tumor. Interestingly, this natural mixture of natural compounds is also able to work at the genetic level in cancer cells and convert them from cells which are immortal into cells that start dying. And so these micronutrients can induce natural death of cancer cells called apoptosis. And we also published lots of studies supporting this type of findings. So if we can, what is the beauty of using nutrient synergy is that several mechanisms that are involved in certain pathology can be affected at once, making, in case of cancer, more difficult for cancer cells to escape this control.
What are these nutrients that have the synergistic
Components?
effect, like the orchestra? What are the components of this?
Yeah, this is vitamin C for simple reasons, since we are targeting the stability and integrity of connective tissue. Without vitamin C, connective tissue cannot be produced. The other compound of this synergy, very powerful component, is amino acid lysine. Lysine is an inhibitor of those collagen digestive enzymes, but also lysine is a component of collagen. 1/3 of amino acids in collagen are lysine and proline. So it is important that they are included. And lysine, similarly to vitamin C, is not produced in our body. It only comes from the diet. We are also having other components like N-acetylcysteine. We are having trace elements, including copper, selenium, and we are having the active component from green tea called epigallocatechin gallate, or EGCG for short, and quercetin. So this is the mixture of several components. You can find the information on our website. And this is what we tested them. We tested individual compounds, and also we combined them in the synergy. So there are components acting on different mechanisms in our body, including what we see. They also have an anti-inflammatory effect. And what we know from one side, inflammation is associated with cancer, and also long-lasting inflammation is the triggering factor for developing cancer. And these micronutrients are also effective in addressing this important aspect. So this is this pleiotropic effect of micronutrient synergy that we are working with.
I love the way that Dr. Niedzwiecki puts that, the micronutrient synergy. But this isn't just theory. Doctors Rath and Niedzwiecki have literally thousands of patients across Europe that are treating and beating cancer with their micronutrient protocol.
We have mostly here in Europe more than 10,000 patients who are using this synergy program, and some of them have survived the predicted death now for 15 years. We have X-ray documentation of many of them, etc. And we've summarized this fantastic work that Dr. Niedzwiecki and her team were leading in a book called Victory Over Cancer. So anyone who wants to get more details on what we're just explaining, it is available for free online. Everyone can read it anywhere in the world. There are, to our knowledge, to our understanding, there is no more precise mechanism that has been identified as being critical for the control of cancer than the one we just described. There's no program that we are aware of in the field of natural health that is more effective in controlling cancer in vivo in humans. We're not giving a guarantee, obviously. That would be not what we ethically should do. But we know that there are no science-based programs in natural health that are more effective as we speak. Micronutrients give, in layman's terms now, give the cancer cell two options. Either you think about how you operate properly and become a healthy cell again, or you die, you commit suicide. And this is this process that Dr. Niedzwiecki said, apoptosis. And that happens at a genetic level, and we understand quite a bit about the regulation, how micronutrients go directly to the core of a cancer cell, to the DNA, and challenges the inner sanctum of this cell into this process. Of course, it is not an intellectual deliberation, it is a forced biological interception. Either you function properly or you commit suicide. And that's really powerful. That is something that no chemotherapy drug or no synthetic drug can do. And of course that is, again, is a sign for the real power of natural health. These regulatory processes, they didn't appear in a reagent glass or a petri dish in a laboratory of the pharmaceutical industry 20 years ago or 5 years ago. These are processes that nature developed over millennia, and this is why they function so distinctly. One of our first patients, that's now almost 20 years ago, who went on the program here in Europe, he had lung cancer, and he was given half a year to live and put his affairs in order, and he decided to go on this program, and I think 6-7 months later he came back, and X-ray was taken and there was no more tumor. So the doctor apologized. He said, sorry, you have to come back a week later. We need to repair our machine. It is apparently kaputt, as they say in German. And so the gentleman says, sure, I understand. I come back in a week. And they redid the X-ray. It was the same picture. And then the doctor started to try to find other excuses because this was a female doctor. She had not seen anything like that. But our patient, he said, well, I don't think I need to come back. I know what I've been doing. And that I'm not telling that to add an episode to this conversation. I'm telling it to underline the transformational time, that it is inconceivable for health professionals, for doctors, educated people, that cancer can disappear in a natural way, just go away.
I agree with Dr. Rath. This is inconceivable for most doctors because they've been miseducated about natural cancer treatments. Back in episode 1, we had a little history lesson about why doctors don't know and why they don't believe in natural treatments.
Tai, if we are not learning from history, and I'm quoting a philosopher, we are sentenced to relive it again. And I wasn't born as a historian. I was a scientist, a doctor. And after publishing this initial new concepts on cancer and heart disease with Linus Pauling, I felt the world will embrace us. They will say, this is great. Fact is, we were being fought for every single advance in natural health. There were more than 100 lawsuits that the status quo, the pharmaceutical lobby, has been bringing against myself, Dr. Nitzwicki, our research, over the past 15 years. More than 100 times we were dragged into the courtrooms for one goal. These interests did not want us to talk today, or for that matter, to inform you what we have found out about the most common diseases can be greatly reduced, maybe eventually largely eliminated with the knowledge we have today. The fact that we are doing this interview now shows they didn't succeed. And the main reason why we succeeded, actually summarizing it in one word, was science.
These interests did not want us to have this conversation, but we did. And yes, Dr. Rath's protocol has mountains of scientific evidence to support it. But these same interests that have persecuted Dr. Rath and Dr. Niedzwiecki are attempting to stifle science-based, innovative cancer treatments across the globe. Another scientist that has been persecuted by these same interests for using outside-the-box type treatments is Dr. Stanislaw Brzezinski out of Houston, Texas. He uses a treatment that's called antineoplastons. Now, antineoplastons are basically like a missing link between proteins and amino acids. And he realized that cancer patients are typically deficient in these certain types of antineoplastons. While we were in Seattle, I was able to sit down with Dr. Gaston Cornu-Labat, who learned about the antineoplaston treatment from Dr. Brzezinski, and he shares some of the behind-the-scenes happenings of the persecution of Dr. Brzezinski and his treatment.
It's very unclear exactly what's going on between the FDA and Brzezinski, except that every step he tries to take with the antineoplaston therapy, there's some kind of roadblock. Okay. So at that time, the roadblock, in my understanding, was that the FDA was looking into the clinics, the Brzezinski clinic started clinical trials. However, any patient outside of the conditions of the clinical trial that needed treatment could not be done in the clinic. So they needed somebody outside the clinic to run antineoplaston therapy. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So I went to Houston, I spent a couple of days there, I started getting acquainted with the therapy, and from then on started developing all the necessary knowledge to be able to start implementing the therapy in our clinic. Now, each patient that was referred to me for antineoplaston therapy needed to go through a process of approval of investigational new drug application, expanded access.
Okay.
So that's an IND application. So a second patient was a 4-year-old kid from Florida. 4 years old.
Okay.
With what's known as DIPG, which is a kind of an advanced brainstem
Diffused
tumor.
intrinsic
Pontine glioma.
Pontine glioma. Okay.
Yes. And DIPG is well established. It doesn't respond to anything. So these kids, it's common in children, and these kids die from it. Brzezinski has documented cases. Not every tumor responds, that's for sure. But he has documented cases of complete response, of significant prolongation of life, and documented cases of cures, of complete response, complete remission of the tumor.
With DIPG specifically?
With DIPG,
Okay.
yes. Which is the only therapy right now that can claim some percentage of total response.
Okay.
There's no other therapy that can claim that, period. Nothing in the literature that says, we have cured one patient or two patients, nothing.
Okay.
actually Bursinski is the only one that can claim that. There's patients 20 years ago that's still running around.
I've seen the pictures on his walls.
Right.
Okay, so just to recap to this point, there are children with brain tumors that are untreatable by any conventional methods. Dr. Brzezinski's anti-neoplaston treatment has proven to cure these types of tumors that are untreatable. But because of the onerous FDA regulations, he's not able to treat them. So Dr. Labat has learned from Dr. Brzezinski how to do this anti-neoplaston treatment. He completed an IND, which is an innovative new drug application. And then that's where our story picks up.
When I moved ahead with the application for the second case, they spent about 4 weeks back and forward picking on little, oh, this word here doesn't fit, this word here doesn't fit, what are these charges, So it was picking on nuisance, if the expression is correct, for about a month and a half. This kid was a very advanced case, deteriorating on a daily basis almost. And then after a month and a half, they said, okay, the request is on hold, on clinical hold, which means it's in limbo.
In limbo.
Because we're not denying it.
But you can't do it.
But you can't do it because it's on hold. And okay, why? Well, because we think that the risks outweigh the benefits.
And this
Kid's
is
going to die.
This is with a terminal brain cancer patient that has no options.
Well, the kid's going to die.
Other than this,
right? Well, we really can't disclose the information we have to conclude this.
So the risks are greater than the risk of death? I mean, how can you have something that's more risky than death?
I have no explanation whatsoever. We could not make sense. The family was totally devastated. My participation in this was, tell them, I think it's absurd.
Yeah.
I think you are responsible. If this kid dies, you're responsible for this kid's death. Not because he was going to be saved for sure with antineoplastons, but because he had a possibility. And best evidence that we have, and Bursinski has collected a lot of scientific, he's by no means esoteric, natural, voodoo, nothing.
He's a scientist.
Tremendously scientific.
Right.
Tremendously scientific. And all the evidence that's collected pointed out to the fact that antineoplastos is the only therapy available today that could give a possibility to this child of having an improvement or even a small chance, but chance nonetheless, of a cure. Now, the FDA considered in writing that the risks of doing this therapy outweigh the benefits. Of what? I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it.
That's insane.
It is very, very profoundly absurd. Now, after that was a kind of disheartening experience. There had been a lot of work. I mean, I'm not the significant one on this. This kid ended up dying. The family totally devastated. I don't think the family ever initiated any kind of legal actions or anything on this. They were running, getting into depth with everything they could and trying to collect money to treat this little kid that was dying. And they were so broken down afterwards that it just hushed and it went to kind of oblivion, It gets forgotten. How do you sleep at night after condemning a 4-year-old to die?
This is criminal, folks. Children are being condemned to death because they don't have access to these innovative treatments that could save their life. How do these bureaucrats sleep at night? And the doctors are handcuffed because they can't use the treatments.
It's not easy to treat these advanced patients because we are continuously being harassed for doing this, okay? Which is incredible. We should be awarded. We should be set up the example. We are saving the lives of people who are sentenced to die. No, we are mercilessly harassed by lawyers, by people who know nothing about treatment, who are stupid puppets of the guys behind who knows very well what we can offer, but are directing these guys like in Nazi Germany, and they are simply obeying orders because they were programmed this way, okay? I think there will be a time when there is some type of Nuremberg trial. So all of these white-collar, nicely dressed lawyers and clerks who are chewing the money of taxpayers, they be held accountable for what they do, because many people died because of their actions.
Now, one such child that died because of these despicable actions is Thomas Navarro. I had the privilege to interview his mother and father, Jim and Donna, and Thomas was diagnosed with a terminal type of brain cancer. They wanted to take Thomas to Dr. Brzezinski's clinic, and this was about 20 years ago. But because of these onerous regulations of the FDA and the fact that they require the children to go through chemotherapy and radiation first before they can use Dr. Brzezinski's treatment, they forced Thomas to do this. And in 18 months, Thomas was dead before he could get to the antineoplaston treatment. And on his death certificate, one of the reasons for death was toxicity due to chemotherapy. The treatment actually killed him.
Recently, randomized controlled clinical trials have been completed by our Japanese colleagues on antineoplastons in colon cancer, which spread to the liver. They proved that they can increase the survival, median survival, okay, by about 3 years. Median survival is 5 years, by about 3 years, okay. 3 years versus 3 weeks or versus 3 months, because usual standard for FDA for approval for the new drug is to extend median survival from 3 weeks to 3 months. Here you got about 3 years, okay.
And they're still having issues.
No, they're saying, well, the risks
The risks are too great.
Does not justify the benefits. Okay?
Well, my question is this. The risks are, if you look at risk versus reward.
Well, the risk is death, okay? Because
the risk is death.
Obviously, liver cancer, colon cancer with liver spread, practically everybody dies for it, okay?
Dr. Brzezinski just shared with us about controlled clinical trials on colon cancer, and they're having great success with his treatment. Case in point, here's one of Dr. Brzezinski's patients that was diagnosed with colon cancer 8 years ago. He went to Herman Memorial in Houston and also MD Anderson in Houston, and both of those hospitals and all the physicians there told him that his only option was surgery. But then he learned about the Brzezinski Clinic.
I have relatives here, not in Houston, and everybody was saying, what are you waiting for? Go for surgery. Go get your surgery, and then you can talk about the Brzezinski Clinic later on. But you need to do the surgery. That's what the doctor says. My elder brother is a doctor. His friends are doctors, and the pressure was too much. But you know what? I was a little bit stubborn. I said, you know what? I'm going with him. If that's where it's going to end, that's where it's going to end. But I'm not going to do surgery. I'm not going to do radiation and all that stuff. So I called them up. So I came on down here, and they said, okay, and they took me through what they're going to do, their treatment protocol, and they laid it out for me, and they said they have to do a blood work, map my genes, I don't remember well, map my genes, and then see what kind of treatment would be best for me, and I really like that, you know.
Individualized treatment.
Individualized, that's really one other thing that made me say, this guy is different. So after 3 months, I went for a checkup, another PET scan checkup. That was on a Friday. And the result came back, the tumor was gone. Can you believe it?
Tumor was gone.
Tumor was gone. The tumor was gone. If I had gone for surgery, because my tumor was right at the junction of the small and large intestine, and there's a valve there they call the cecum valve that regulates the flow of nutrients from your small intestine to your large intestine, and that could have been taken out during surgery. And so I would have been a candidate for colostomy bag. So I would have been carrying colostomy bag, and I wouldn't have met you because I'll be dead by now.
So this treatment saved your life.
Oh, it did. I feel great.
Yeah, you look great.
I feel great.
That's awesome to hear Chris's testimonial, and it's so good that Dr. Brzezinski is having success with his treatment. But that doesn't mean that it's any easier for him to prescribe it for his patients. And one of the main reasons is that the decisions on which treatments are available for use are not being made by medical doctors. They're being made by attorneys and by bureaucrats.
how the doctor can select the best treatment for his patient if the only treatment he can give is up to the lawyers, up to the nurses who never treated such things, okay? They don't have any idea how to treat advanced cancer, okay? Yeah. And this is the system which is punishing the doctors to be inventors, to be discoverers. And the name of the game is the big money, because if you have many doctors who are inventors, it's no good for the large institution. The inventors should be awarded, not punished. I am being punished now by Texas Medical Board for saving lives of the worst cancers you can get. Pancreatic cancer. We have a patient who survived over 6 years with pancreatic cancer which spread to the liver, okay? I am now investigated. I have to go to court. I may lose my license because the Texas board is harassing me because I use my invention to save the life of this patient, okay? This patient obviously was sentenced to die. Everybody dies from pancreatic cancer. It's 1 out of million cases which lives a little longer, okay? Usually people who have cancer, pancreatic cancer spread to the liver, they are dead within a few months, okay? We have a number of patients who have very long-time survivors, like over 20 years or approaching 20 years. And within the last year or two, we have a number of weddings to which we are invited. And these are weddings of the patients whom we studied as little children. Now they grew up, they don't have cancer, they live normal life. And they live highly productive life. They don't have long-term adverse reactions, okay? They tolerate the treatment well. They live normal life.
What I liked about the clinic was when I came here, it had a full-time dietitian that I had to see, that guided me as to what to eat to help me with my treatment. And I came to realize later that nutrition is a key component of your treatment. You get the food that Mother Nature gave you, and your body can take care of itself. That I believe that 100%.
I do too.
I don't care what it is. You got to eat, baby. You got to eat.
Eat clean foods, right?
Yes. You got to eat the real food,
yeah,
and you'll be okay.
The first doctor that you visited, Chris, did he have any kind of a nutritional plan over at MD Anderson?
No.
No?
No. They never talked about nutrition. The first doctor that I went for colonoscopy, right? Colonoscopy, right?
Yeah.
And at first he said it was surgery. So he didn't say anything about nutrition or anything else. He said it doesn't matter what opinion I got, it was going to be surgery anyway. So I went to MD Anderson and they told me the same. As a matter of fact, they scheduled surgery about 3 days after I met them.
Really?
And I hadn't even told my family, you know, that I had cancer. Now here you are scheduling me for surgery. I got to go home and tell my family first. So there was nothing about nutrition whatsoever. If anybody has cancer, if you have the money, unfortunately, it's expensive, and the insurance will not pick up the tab. But if you have the money, come on here. And that's all I'm saying. You come on here.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
Awesome. It's great to hear the rest of Chris's testimonial, and I have to agree with him. Nutrition is the key. As a matter of fact, food can be epigenetic. Let's listen to some more of our experts discuss that topic.
Trust me, if you're sick, it's not because you're pharmaceutically disadvantaged. It's probably because there's some underlying thing. Now, it might not be food, it might be stress, it might be, it might be something else. And certainly there are genetic propensities. But what we've now learned already through epigenetics is that we can actually, move our diet to a profoundly elevated nutritional plane enough to actually override our genetic propensity, and through epigenetics realign in a healthy fashion those genetic propensities and start over. Now, whether you could say you can start over completely, we could argue, but at least you can give yourself a new shot at it. You're not just inevitably programmed for whatever grandma, mom had or whatever. We can absolutely change that epigenetic code through care and attention to our body's fuel.
I always tell my patients to eat the rainbow because every pigment in fruits and vegetables actually enters the nucleus of the cell and interacts with your genes, which is why it matters what you eat, right? So if you just eat the rainbow and half your plate is colorful fruits and vegetables, blueberries, spinach, kale, carrots, tomatoes, persimmons, pomegranates. If you eat color, you're going to also get these phytochemicals. Also, you have a medicine chest in your spice rack in your kitchen. Oregano, thyme, ginger, turmeric. All of the culinary spices not only aid your digestion, but they also have these powerful chemicals. Carnosol is found in rosemary, for example, a very powerful anti-cancer chemical. So we can easily make our diets talk to our genes. Really easy. Anybody can do it. It's actually more powerful to turn on what we call the apoptotic switch, which is a signal, an intelligence, a wisdom in cells that tells them they're not healthy cells, they should die and recycle themselves. That is lost in tumor cells. So not only are they growing, but they're failing to die. And so a better solution is over here. And there are so many botanicals and phytochemicals that turn that apoptotic switch back on. So that's really powerful. Resveratrol, curcumin, ECGC in green tea. These are examples of common phytochemicals used in cancer that do that.
It's nature's medicine and has been that way ever since there's been people. The wise grannies and some of the wise grandpas learned that this herb or that thing helped with this problem, and they passed it down and passed it down and passed it down. But it's medicine that is derived from our planet. Now, the reason that's so important, it's derived from our planet, is that our bodies are made up of the substance and energy of planet Earth. Unless we're space aliens, and that's a different story. Okay. But if we're not space aliens...
Maybe the FDA is space aliens.
I don't know. One wonders sometimes. If we're regular people, substance and energy of planet Earth. And the molecules are all from planet Earth, and the energies are all from planet Earth. So, what's going to work best in your Chevy if it's broken? Chevy parts! If the body is broken, do we put in original body parts, which are original molecules and original energies? No! We take them and we twist them a little bit so we can patent them, and of course they don't fit quite right anymore if it's a molecule, or we use an energy that isn't natural to the body, and we expect the body to heal with that? The best it can do is cover up symptoms. So you get to buy it for the next 40 years while you're covering up your symptoms.
You cannot cut a tumor off or shrink a tumor or poison a tumor and expect to stay well and stay healthy, because you're not addressing the real problem, you're only addressing the symptom.
If you took your car to a mechanic and there was a flashing check engine light on your car and the mechanic says, yeah, I can fix that, and takes the fuse out, okay? And says, okay, now your problem solved. Or I've got a knocking in my engine. Okay, well here, turn up the radio. Do you hear it now? Well, I can kind of still hear it here. Put some earmuffs on. Yeah, no, now I don't hear it. Okay, perfect. You haven't done anything to the engine.
I would fire the mechanic.
Exactly, and that's the question that when you ask a person, the logical answer is, yeah, I'd fire the mechanic. So then why aren't they firing the doctors? Because that's exactly what the doctors are doing.
Don't smash your body's check engine light. The tumor's a symptom. Unfortunately, most modern oncologists don't look for the cause of the cancer. We're only treating symptoms. But what if you're already on chemo? The good news is that many of these spices and herbs in nature's medicine chest can have a positive effect and actually help chemo be more targeted.
And we're able to now, with conventional therapies, with natural therapies, like I mentioned at the conference here, the bosmeric SR, the curcumin, the boswellia, the ginger, the black pepper, there's a lot of data that will show with the top 15 chemotherapy agents, we can help sensitize a tumor, meaning it takes a toxic agent and makes it more targeted, and it also has a protective effect of, say, oral mucosa damage, heart damage, kidney damage, lung damage, so we're protecting the healthy tissues.
Right.
So sometimes, most people, like we talked about yesterday, most people are going to be getting conventional care. Most people are already in the treatment right now. What can we do to help improve their outcome? And now the data will show that if you had a physician who actually did some studies, and or if you told your oncologist to go on PubMed and look up curcumin and these cancer or these other chemotherapy agents, you will see now the data will support using it in conjunction will have a better outcome than just using it chemotherapy alone. The fear of chemotherapy is the side effects, right? So people lose weight, they have cachexia, diarrhea, hair loss, all these other. The fear of the chemo.
The direct effects.
The direct effects of chemo, right? The common effects of chemo. And so everybody's uniquely different when they get chemo. Some people can get chemo and not have much problems, and some people, they don't survive even the treatment. So we want to improve everybody's outcome. And so what the studies will show, again, but when we take things like basmaric, right, which has a curcumin C3 complex, it has baswan PS, ginger, and black pepper in a special delivery form, you know, during the treatment, in fact, people will do better. And in fact, with our patients, we always improve outcomes. So a lot of people will call us and say, I'm already in my 6th round, and they're expecting to do another 6 more. What can I do? You know, so we're looking at giving natural anti-inflammatories, but these all work on the same pathways. But they also work on preventative and protective pathways. So some of these ingredients like curcumin will increase genetic expression of what we want to turn cancer cells off. So we're not just talking about suppression of cancer growth. We're looking at turning on your own immune system, the inherent ability for the body to heal itself, which is there.
So is that also considered part of epigenetics?
Turning
absolutely. On as well as turning off the gene expression?
Because Western medicine, we have only just to turn off. And that's why when we give some of these agents, they're very good at doing what they're doing. They're turning off certain cells, like cancer cells. But the side effect is they also turn off a lot of normal cells, right? And through that process, there's also damage that some of those cells then can become more resistant to chemotherapy over time, and they can also genetically change where they start creating more cancer or secondary cancers or other chronic conditions down the line.
Now, one treatment protocol that focuses heavily on the diet is the Gerson therapy, oftentimes called the Gerson diet. We had the privilege of traveling to Mexico to the Gerson Clinic of Northern Baja, and we interviewed Dr. Patrick Vickers. Now, Dr. Max Gerson was called the greatest genius in medical history by Nobel Peace Prize winner Albert Schweitzer. And the Gerson therapy relies heavily on the production of energy at the cellular level. Let's have a listen to Dr. Patrick Vickers explain how juicing, which is a staple of the Gerson treatment, fires up the immune system and produces cellular energy.
When you eat raw fruit, raw vegetables, you're drinking raw juices. Do you know if you tested those juices with litmus paper before they went into your body, they test acidic? They test acidic with litmus paper. But when you drink it, that gets broken down into an alkaline ash called potassium hydroxide. The hydroxyl molecule literally goes into your body. Now, chemically written, a hydroxyl molecule is OH negative. Oxygen, hydrogen, negative charge. What's hydrogen? The acidic nature of hydrogen is a positively charged hydrogen ion, H positive. Imagine what happens when that juice gets broken down into hydroxyl ions, OH negative, and reacts with the positively charged hydrogen ion. What reaction do you think takes place? You have an OH negative and an H positive, 2 H's and an O. That reaction forms water. Water is neutral. You neutralize that acidity. You've now changed the charge at the level of the cell membrane, and you've now just allowed your body to properly oxygenate tissues, making the sugars in these fruits and vegetable juices and the natural fruits and vegetables they get at our clinic, they can now be easily converted to massive amounts of energy. And that is what ultimately fires up the immune system, and that's why we have the storied history of reversing these advanced diseases. One of the biggest portions of the therapy is the detoxification procedures of the Gerson therapy. And the Gerson therapy has made these famous, and that's the coffee enema. Now, we're talking about the juicing and how the juicing neutralizes that acidity and forms water. Well, if you're forming massive amounts of water in the body like that, what do you think's happening on a cellular level? The toxins are getting flushed out of the cells into the bloodstream. And those toxins, they have to get released. The coffee enema. Now, people say, come on, now I've heard everything. The coffee enema, I prefer to take mine in the morning, first thing when I wake up.
With cream and sugar?
With cream and sugar. But it's ingenious. Let me explain why. There's a lot of reasons why, but the main reason is this. Your liver produces an enzyme. It's called glutathione transferase. Glutathione transferase, it's the most potent detoxifying enzyme in the human body. The liver produces it. What the liver uses is palmitic acid as the chemical base to produce glutathione transferase. Properly roasted, organic coffee. It's lightly roasted. It's not a drinking coffee. It's a particular bean that's not a drinking bean, and it's also roasted so lightly that you don't denaturize it like you would a drinking coffee. But properly roasted coffee is loaded with palmitic acid. And studies on coffee enemas have proven that when you do one coffee enema, the production of glutathione transferase by the body goes up 600 to 700% greater than normal. And our patients, they're getting 5 a day. In 1959, Gerson wrote a book right before he died, and he theorized the direction he wanted to take his therapy in. And he mentioned the word Coley's. He mentioned William B. Coley. William B. Coley was a Harvard oncologist. And back in the late 1800s, actually, he discovered that when his patients came down with staph or strep infections, their cancers got better or went away, they reduced or went away completely. But once the infection was gone, they started to come back. So what he did was he began to culture the toxins that staph and strep bacteria make. And he began injecting them into the connective tissue of his patients. And he got the same fever response. The patients would break out in fevers and their tumors would reduce. Laetrile, that's one of the darling therapies that people come to Mexico for, and they've been coming for years. Laetrile is vitamin B17. It comes from apricot kernel, right? Apricot kernel pits. And its active agent is cyanide, ultimately. And it causes immediate cell death of cancer cells. But it really has to be done in conjunction with hyperthermia. Hyperthermia it's been shown that when you do Laetrile with hyperthermia, its effects go up nearly 7 to 10-fold. When Thomas Edison said the doctor of the future will give no medicine but will interest his patients in nutrition and caring for the human spine, he was talking about a chiropractor and a Gerson therapist.
He was a pretty smart fella.
He was.
The Gerson therapy revolves around detoxification, optimizing the immune system, and massive amounts of nutrition. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Chris Wark, who, when he was diagnosed with supposedly terminal colon cancer over a decade ago, he decided that rather than poison his body with chemo, he would, and I quote, overdose on nutrition. Let's listen to what Chris has to say about nutrition and the immune system.
The only permanent cure to cancer is your immune system. And nutrition gives your immune system the firepower it needs to keep you well. So without nutrition, you're fighting with no weapons. Without your immune system, you're fighting with no army.
I picked up that book and went to the University of Washington Library. That book had a lot of nice footnotes to the medical studies. And I started, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff about vitamins and minerals and herbs that I never learned in medical school. And it's right there in the medical journal. How come I never learned it in medical school?
Dr. Wright never learned this because medical schools do not teach nutrition. But perhaps there are certain things that are self-evident. Perhaps if we really opened our minds, we would realize that almost everything in nature is medicine.
You can't even walk through nature without encountering medicine everywhere. There's an ancient fable in traditional Chinese medicine where a Chinese teacher challenges his students to go out into nature, walk into the forest, and try to find anything that isn't medicine. And the students point to the rocks, and they say, well, those rocks, those aren't medicine. The teacher says, but of course they are. They're made of minerals. The right minerals with the right treatment can be very medicinal, can be very healing. So yeah, those can be medicine too. And the students point to, well, the tree bark, that's not medicine. Well, of course tree bark is medicine. Where does cinnamon come from? Cinnamon helps regulate blood sugar. It's part of traditional Chinese medicine. Many of the medicinal substances come from bark. Even aspirin is derived from the white willow bark that was originally used by the American Indians. So yeah, of course the tree bark is medicine. Well, the students point to the dirt. Well, the dirt can't be medicine. But the dirt is full of probiotics, living organisms. The right organisms can actually, if you ingest them, enhance your health and protect your health. So those can be medicine too. Everything around you. What about the sunlight? That's medicine. What about the tree leaves? That's medicine. What about the air that you're breathing? Well, you can breathe therapeutically. You can reduce stress. You can change your physiology by breathing in the right manner. So even the sound from the water is medicine.
Isn't it insane that people sometimes have to risk going to jail to treat their cancer the way that they see fit? Now, one substance that people do risk going to jail if they are caught in the possession of this substance is hemp or cannabis, sometimes referred to by the slang term marijuana. It's not commonly known that the hemp plant is not only a medicine, but it's a superfood. And as we're about to hear from Dr. Patrick Quillen, who is the former Vice President of Nutrition for the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, he calls it the most useful plant on earth. Talk real quickly, if you will, about the medicinal effects of the hemp plant or the cannabis.
Hemp cannabis is arguably the most useful plant on earth. If you do a history of it, you look at canvas, which is what our ancestors used for the Conestoga wagons and for their clothing. Canvas comes from the word cannabis, because cannabis was the material that they used to make all of their clothing and canvas. It lasts longer than cotton or polyester. If you go back and look at your history, it was around 1937 when DuPont got its patent for polyester, and that was the beginning of the witch hunt to get rid of cannabis because it was competition. You look at, you can use it for paper pulp, for clothing. You can eat it. The food, the seeds are high in omega-3 fats, high in protein. The oils from hemp oil is delicious, nutty tasting, and high in omega-3s. And then there's the medicinal parts, the cannabinoids. There are many studies that have been done. One of them, for instance, the DEA, Department of Drug Enforcement Agency, decided they wanted to prove how unhealthy marijuana was. And so they went to a major researcher at UCLA, University of California at Los Angeles, and said, we want you to prove that smoking marijuana causes lung cancer. He said, shouldn't be a problem. They did a huge study, prospective randomized trial, and he said, not only it doesn't cause it, it actually helps to prevent it. THC has an anti-cancer property. I'm not telling people you should smoke marijuana. I'm telling you that we need to have a rational discussion on marijuana, hemp, cannabis, because there's an abundance of data now that says that it's non-toxic and has therapeutic benefits. The CBD, the cannabinoids, apparently there are cannabinoid receptors in the human body, and it's almost as if nature designed, here's lock and key, and this fits in, and it improves. It's a adaptogen, not unlike ginseng or garlic or substances that just make everything work a little bit better.
We're learning what's known as, what we all have, an endocannabinoid system or endocannabinoid receptors or cannabinoid receptors within the body. There are certain foods that contain these cannabinoids. There are certain abilities to produce some from within as well. But these receptors are present almost everywhere in the body, particularly heavily entrenched in the gastrointestinal system, the liver, the brain, the nervous system, interestingly enough. And what we're finding, the impact of the two key cannabinoids, they're not the only ones, the cannabidiol, which is CBD, the non-psychoactive component it's considered, and the THC, the tetrahydrocannabinol, which you say also well. And those two aspects, which the THC is considered the psychoactive component, it alters the state of the mind, and that's been argued as the dangerous addictive drug, which now doctors like Sanjay Gupta and others say, well, maybe it's not really that addictive at all. In fact, it might have benefit. And we're finding out in relation to certain cancers, not just one or two, but many cancers, a tremendous benefit. Some to stimulate the apoptosis, right, the cellular death. Others to address protection of cells, neurological cells, brain and nervous system cells from cancer. A lot of epithelial integrity relying upon the impact of these cannabinoids. We talk about gastrointestinal recovery, seizure disorders in children and adults. A lot of it is actually sourced right there in that second brain in the gut. And in these cases, we're seeing the use of CBD, sometimes THC, or both together, are reversing these cancers and reversing even seizure activity, seizure disorders.
So are there studies that have shown that there's effectiveness with the CBD and the THC against cancer?
Oh, an incredible amount. It's almost too much to go through. If we talk about the references that we have here for breast cancer, colorectal cancer, prostate cancer, stomach cancer, skin cancer, leukemia, lymphoma, lung cancer, uterine cancer, thyroid cancer, pancreatic cancer, cervical cancer, mouth cancer, glioma, brain cancer, and biliary tract cancer, biliary. So we've got tremendous amount of scientific research. A 2007 Harvard Medical School study published in Science Daily showed that hemp's THC decreases lung cancer tumors by 50% and it significantly reduces the ability of the cancer to metastasize. I mean, this is huge. Again, this is just one of many things. Here it is, cannabinoids. This is directly from a United States patent. This is the shocker. Cannabinoids, including THC and cannabidiol, promote the reemergence of apoptosis so that tumors will stop dividing and die. This is a profound, now I'm not one that says there's one panacea that does everything for everyone, but if there was a plant to look at one plant that does so many extraordinary things. This cannabis plant, which is sometimes wrongly referred to as in marijuana as the slang, or hemp as well, in many forms has so much from a nutritional value, but now we learn more and more about its specific value in reversing cancers that are active, much less in their prevention.
It's not a gateway to more drugs, it's a gateway to health. And I'm not smoking it, I'm not using it. I think it should be legalized and available and taxed and regulated so that we have standardized concentrations of it. If you compare it to the $280 billion a year drug industry, and according to an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association, at least 100,000 Americans die each year from the on-label use of prescription drugs. Find me the deaths from cannabis.
They're not there.
They aren't there.
While we were in London, we also had the privilege of interviewing a gentleman named David Hibbett. Now, in July of 2012, he was diagnosed with stage 3 aggressive bowel cancer. He did a couple of rounds of chemo, and he was told twice that he was cancer-free, and that's where our story picks up. The first time you were told that you were okay, you probably believed it. Second time, were you a little bit more skeptical in light of the fact that it had already returned once?
Yeah, well, I obviously had that in the back of my mind, but I wanted to believe that I would be okay, so I suppose at the time I tried not to think about that too much. Especially just coming over chemotherapy as well, and how bad it made me feel. I just wanted to get better. Christmas was coming up as well, so.
Right. And you're a young man, so how old were you when you were diagnosed?
30. I'm 33 now.
Okay.
But yeah, it was soon after Christmas when it came back again for the third time, again in the lymph nodes. Okay. This time, though, this is when they told me, I was terminal and there's very little they could do. Mm.
What kind of an emotional blow was that to hear that after the first two, you go through the 2 rounds of treatments, you're told you're cancer-free twice, and now they say, well, actually, it's terminal.
I can't put it into words. Devastated, completely devastated. I've got a little boy who was 3 or 4 at the time, and just couldn't accept it from him. I couldn't believe it, but I struggled to see how I was going to get through it after him telling me that. Yeah. Obviously, my family, my mum especially, it's devastating for everyone. It really was.
Where did you go from there?
Well, initially I went with the treatments that they offered me. I went on to the chemotherapy. I did that for 3 months.
Even though they said it was terminal?
Yeah. They told me that this would possibly extend my life. If I didn't have the treatment, they were saying I'd go around about 6 months to live. With the treatment, depending on its success, I could have 18 months. So to me at the time, I thought an extra 12 months with my little boy, I'll do it. 3 months into the chemo, I had another scan. It had been reasonably successful. The tumours had shrunk a bit, but they were still giving me the same prognosis. And it was then, because I'd started to get a lot more sick 3 months into it, it was then I was thinking, I'm not going to last 18 months anyway. My body's telling me, it can't go on no more. And I'd been told about certain alternative treatments by people leading up to this point, but to be honest with you, I didn't actually believe them back then. But it just come to a point where I knew I had to try something, whether I believed it or not. And I looked on the internet, and there was one particular thing that kept coming up more than anything, and there seemed to have been a certain amount of research done, maybe not on humans as such, but in a lot of laboratories. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead with this treatment, and well, it's done really well for me, it really has.
What did you decide to do?
It was cannabis oil. Okay. It's extracted from a cannabis plant. It has high THC content. Okay. It's something that I take orally. Just putting a little bit in my mouth, letting it absorb. I took this alongside chemotherapy initially for a couple of months, and it made me feel a hell of a lot better just on the chemotherapy. My hair stopped falling out. The pins and needles that I got from the last chemotherapy, which was told I'd have for the rest of my life, actually have disappeared, and they started to disappear when I started taking this oil. I actually started missing chemotherapy sessions then. I only went once a month for the next couple of months, and then eventually stopped at the beginning of August. I then went on to have further scans, and the fear of it growing or spreading that the doctors thought was going to happen never happened. They've gone on to remove my lymph nodes. Now the measurement when they took the lymph node out is actually a little bit smaller than what it was after I stopped the chemo. And after the operation, I just changed my diet, was very healthy. They couldn't give me radiotherapy because I'd had the legal amount already. I didn't want the chemotherapy, so I just carried on with the oil and good diet. This time, 3 months on, the scan was clear. That's the first time it's happened for me.
Now here in UK, how do you get hemp oil? Is you have to go to the doctor to get it prescribed, or?
It's actually illegal in the UK.
Is it?
Yeah,
okay.
It's illegal medically, it's illegal recreationally. It's not seen as having any medical use in the UK at the moment.
It's illegal in many states in the United States too.
Yes, I believe it is.
It depends on the state, but many states it's illegal as well.
Yeah, and a lot of other countries it's still illegal as well. So I made some myself by purchasing the cannabis illegally. Right. And I also purchased some of it from, I suppose, what you call a local drug dealer.
Isn't it absurd, David, that you have to go to a underground drug dealer to buy a plant that can heal your cancer?
It's crazy, absolutely crazy. I just don't understand it. I really don't. You know, I've gone back to the doctors, I've looked at my records, and they're now actually telling me to continue doing what I'm doing.
They're telling you to continue?
Yeah, but
that's great.
But I've not got it in writing, unfortunately. But if the doctors are willing to say that to me, you know, I can't understand why it's classed as an illegal drug. If, you know, it's being used for medicinal use, it just does not make sense. If you looked at me, you know, 3 months before taking cannabis oil, and then looked at me now, the difference, I look 10 years younger. It's truly amazing. Like my family have commented on it a lot. I personally didn't realise, and then I looked back at photographs and I saw for myself, and you know, I was just shocked. I really was. It was crazy. I looked like an old man.
How did you feel after you go through your first scan that's completely clear, you go home and see your boy? I mean, how emotionally contrast that with how you felt before when you had the diagnosis?
Oh man, I don't know.
You can't even describe it.
It makes me emotional now thinking about it. Honestly, it's after being told that, and then such a short time as well to get told pretty much the exact opposite. It's unreal, and you know, the journey I've gone through as well, and taking the oil, and you know, my friends and family didn't want me to do the oil and stop the chemotherapy.
Right.
You know, nobody wanted me to, because you know, even though we thought it might work and we all had to hope it might work, nobody knew. So, you know, it's been an emotional roller coaster, and, you know, to get that news, it's just...
I bet it was
It's amazing, yeah, surreal. It's...
Now, your friends and family now...
Oh, yeah. They're all for it now, and, you know, they're backing me to, you know, try and get this available to cancer patients, you know, in this country. I've started off my own little petition. You know, to have it illegal for a cancer patient, you know, it's just absolutely crazy. And if they want to try it, you know, they should be allowed to. And you know, I've even spoke to the police, and I won't say the police person's name, but they says to me, you know, if it's for medicinal reasons, they don't want to arrest anyone for it. Why would they? The high is a side effect, so you know, if you're not taking it to get high, you're taking it to make them feel a little bit better. Like I say, how can you arrest someone for that? Right. I was told I was terminal, and now I'm told I'm not. So, you know, there is hope there. It's not just me as well, there's plenty of other people that have come through it.
Yeah, most definitely.
And if I can, well, they can too.
Well, these stories really give you hope, don't they? Now, one of the things, well, actually a couple things that David was not able to share with us because they hadn't happened yet was, number one, he recently had another scan, and he was told that he's cancer-free. So that's 2 scans that he's gotten, and he's completely cancer-free. And then, probably even more exciting to David at this point, is just a couple months ago, in August of 2015, he got married. Think about how ironic this is. Hemp is natural, and it heals cancer. Chemotherapy is synthetic and artificial, and oftentimes, it kills the cancer patient. It reminds me of a quote from Sir Albert Howard.
Sir Albert Howard said, and he's of course the godfather of modern scientific aerobic composting, and in his iconic book, An Agricultural Testament, 1943, he said when we feed the soil with artificials, that's what he called chemical fertilizer, artificials. He said when we feed the soil with artificials, it creates artificial plants which make artificial animals, which make artificial people who can only be kept alive with artificials. If you eat things you can pronounce, and you eat things, the plants and animals, from sources that honor the distinctives, the glory of those beings, the chances are it will honor your place and your glory as well.
If you walk into a grocery store, 90% of the groceries in the grocery store are toxic and they'll cause cancer. 90%. You know what? If it's not from a farmer, it's not worth eating.
Well, what's your take on the ketogenic diet and cancer?
Well, I believe it has great value, and in my view, should be seriously considered as an adjunctive therapy in the treatment of most malignancies. And you might say, why? Because of the basic understanding that we have of the physiology of cancer cells. And Otto Warburg was awarded a Nobel Prize, I believe in the 30s, for the understanding that the primary fuel for cancer cells is glucose or sugar. And our cells, our non-cancer cells, have the ability to use glucose or fat. Those are the two primary fuels. And cancer cells seem to have lost this ability. So when the unfortunate challenge in contemporary Western countries is that most of us are not very well adapted to burning fat effectively. And this is an artifact of the way we eat and the timing of the food that we eat. Primarily it's both. Many people don't understand the timing, but I'll talk about the timing in a moment. So the problem is that we eat regularly, pretty much 3 meals a day, and then snacks in between, and about the only time we aren't eating is when we're sleeping. Right. So our body can store sugar as glycogen in our muscles and our liver, and we have about 12-hour supply, some people less, some people a little bit more, but in that range, not a very long supply, where our fat stores can last us for months. So if we're given sugar all the time and we have that fuel available, then there's really limited reason for our body to have the ability to burn fat. So it suppresses those abilities, those enzymes, and then we just eventually forget how to burn fat efficiently or effectively. So when we shift our diet primarily through restricting processed foods and especially processed sugars, and change the timing of the food, so we have these regular periods where we're not eating for a while, something called intermittent fasting, then we upregulate those enzymes that burn fat, and then we can really shift away from having high levels of sugar in our blood, which also has the additional benefit of improving insulin resistance. And insulin resistance many experts believe, may be at the core of many of these degenerative diseases and many malignancies. So it's really a challenge to treat a cancer if you have high insulin resistance. And so how do you know if you have insulin resistance? Well, typically, clinically, if you're overweight, if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, or if you're taking a statin drug, that's a good suggestion, or high blood pressure.
And how many, that's like 70% of people.
Well, it's about 70-80%. And the other way to know for sure, objectively, is to draw fasting blood insulin, not blood sugar, but blood insulin level. If that's below 3, then you're fine. If it's above 4 or 5, then you probably have it, and the higher it is, the worse it is. So, simple test to do, very inexpensive, available at any commercial lab across the world. And to me, it should be the standard of care in the treatment of anyone with a malignancy, to understand what your fasting insulin level is and to control that. Because if your fasting insulin level is low, then that's going to be highly correlated with your body's ability to effectively metabolize fat as a primary fuel. And that's what you want, to be able to have, that metabolic flexibility, to be able to burn fat or sugar, not just be able to rely on sugar. And because that's going to potentially and more than likely feed into the growth and the acceleration of the malignant cells. There are a number of good studies that show it's quite effective for treating certain types of malignancies, specifically brain cancers. But probably generally useful for most malignancies. But the typical strategy one would do, I think, is to really focus on the quality of the food and the timing of the food. Okay. So I like to call it the 3-8-3. So that is basically, don't eat for at least 3 hours before you go to bed. Okay. Sleep for 8 hours, because sleep is another crucial component for healing. And if you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, your body's immune system is not going to be optimized to fight these malignancies. So when you produce energy in your body, it doesn't occur there magically. There's this process that occurs, and you take these substrates, the fuels that are broken down to either the carbohydrates or the fats, and it combines it with the oxygen. And there's usually some like when you're burning any fuel for energy, there's a byproduct, right? There's waste products. When you're converting hydrogen to fuel, that's a pretty innocuous byproduct. Right. But in our own mitochondria, they produce. You have the potential to produce excessive electrons. And when you do that, your body has to compensate for that with antioxidants. And if you're using the energy, then it's no problem because you generate it, you use it, and it flows, and there's very little excess waste products. But when you don't, and you don't use the energy, if you're not being able to burn fat, and you have a lot of sugar that you're building up, then you have this excess energy. And then these electrons build up. It causes massive amounts of free radicals, which can damage your tissues, your cell membranes, your DNA, can actually prematurely kill your mitochondria, and certainly prematurely age you. There are many experts who believe in the mitochondrial theory of aging. So we want to preserve the function and the health of our mitochondria. One of the best ways you can do this is by simple strategies like delaying the time or not eating before you go to bed. Simple concept, right? But we didn't know that, if you eat right before you bed, it's one of the worst things you can do because you have all this excess energy that's generating. You don't need energy when you're sleeping. That's when you recover and repair. Your body has more than enough fuel to compensate for that. When you have extra and surplus energy going around, you actually cause free radical damage.
Dr. Mercola is explaining the value of the ketogenic diet coupled with intermittent fasting. Now, again, the ketogenic diet is very high in fats, moderate protein, and very few carbs. But not all fats are created equal. We must have high-quality fats. But what exactly are high-quality fats?
High-quality fats, such in examples would be avocados, coconut oil, grass-fed, pastured organic butter, ideally raw, olives. Nuts would be another good source, and you want to be careful to have relatively low protein nuts, so macadamia and pecans would be the two best because they're high in the fat and very low in the protein. Olive oil would work too. You want to be careful of avoiding other oils, the omega-6 oils, the processed oils, the industrialized oils.
All the vegetable oils that people think are healthy because it says vegetable.
Oh yeah, that is absolutely the worst because the other factor that's a variable that's really important in the treatment of cancer is something called the omega-6 to the omega-3 ratio, omega-3 being the good fats, of course, like fish oil and ALA from flaxseed and chia seeds. These are the beneficial ones, and normally that ratio should be anywhere from 1 to 1 to 5 to 1. The problem is when you have a processed food diet, which is loaded with these omega-6 industrialized oils, that ratio can go to 20 to 1 to 50 to 1. Literally 75 to 100 times what it was last century. Around 1900. And all because of this industrialization process to allow the opportunity to have access to this food. You could not create that food prior to that time. This is really an artifact of modern industry.
Yeah, the technology wasn't even in place.
It did not exist.
Eliminate things like omega-6 fats, which are cancer fuels. Corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil, canola oil. They all oxidize, they're all powerful inflammatories, and they promote cancer growth. And that's been proven. It's all through the literature. They make cancer grow faster.
So omega-6 oils actually make cancer grow faster. Please think twice before you buy another gallon of vegetable oil. Dr. Mercola shared the value of intermittent fasting, but what about fasting in general? Here's Dr. Boris Greenblatt from Russia. So, Boris, talk about the importance of fasting, that fasting might play in overcoming cancer, because it's very popular in the United States, and I know in Russia you mentioned that fasting is done as well.
Yes, it's popular in Russia. It doesn't take much money. Cancer cells, they differ from regular cells. And we can play on those differences. And one of the differences, they don't take as well heat as normal cells, and they cannot survive without food for them, which is usually mostly glucose. So in fasting, they suffer more than normal cells. Even for normal cells, it's even good. They kind of detoxify themselves, so nothing bad happening to them. But cancer cells, they die. So that's the reason why it's good. So it's plus for normal cells, and it's minus for cancer cells.
So the fasting eliminates the food for the cancer cells, but you also mentioned they don't respond well to heat, so hyperthermia.
Absolutely. In Russia, what they do, it's famous Russian banya or sauna. So, or in clinics, it's hypothermia. So you can do it double whammy. You can do fast, and then you can do this hypothermia in Russian banya. So you can use this normal physiological difference of cancer cells and kill them with heat and with fasting.
Speaking of fasting, someone recently told me that the only way they could afford to be healthy was to fast, since they couldn't afford to buy organic food. This seems extreme. Is it true? One of the things that I hear a lot is, I can't afford to eat organic food. I know I should, but I can't afford it. So what's your response to someone that says that?
Sure. Well, there are several answers. One is that if you buy in volume, you can save a lot of money. So so get a freezer, all right. And I mean we're in the animal business, so I'm thinking frozen beef and chicken and whatever. But you can get a huge price break if you buy in volume. Number two, look in the mirror and ask yourself: is there anything that I'm buying that I don't need? And whenever anybody says that, I want to grab them and say, okay, take me to your house, and here's what we're not going to find, I'm sure, at your house. We're not going to find soda. We're not going to find lottery tickets. We're not going to find $100 designer jeans with holes already in the knees. Coffee, alcohol, Hot Pockets, frozen microwavable dinners, French fries. All right, I mean, you can go down the list, okay? And the truth is there aren't very many households that don't have those things in them. And none of that is actual nutrition. None of it. I went to New York City's Union Square Green Market, arguably the most expensive farmer's market in the world. And I asked my hostess, I said, could you take me to the most expensive potato in the New York City Union Square Green Market? She said, yes, I know just the guy. So she elbows her way through, and we go up and we get to this potato guy. And he's got, about 30 potatoes out there. There's red ones and white ones and blue ones and green ones and orange ones and fat ones and long ones and skinny ones and all this stuff. And so I look through all the little boxes there, and I find the most expensive one. It's an heirloom Peruvian blue fingerling potato, and it's $1.99 a pound. But that whole market is surrounded by supermarkets with 100 feet of fluorescent lighted, handicapped accessed retail floor space selling French fries and potato chips for $3 a pound.
Yeah. In some cases, organically produced produce will have 100 times higher polyphenols. So when you look at the ultimate price you're paying, maybe it's 50% more for organic, but you're getting 100 times more value as an anti-cancer nutrient, it's clearly a better value. Especially since when you price cancer, you're talking about $1 million, right, and financial bankruptcy, not to mention all of the suffering that it causes.
And Sayer's right, folks. These conventional treatments, they do create a lot of suffering. And nobody wants to see a cancer patient suffer. I can't imagine what it would be like to witness the suffering day in and day out, but many of the practitioners that we interviewed, that's exactly what they do. They've dedicated their lives to helping to alleviate this suffering. And we got insight into one of those doctors when we were in Mexico, Dr. Patrick Vickers. And in this next clip, he shares with us some heartfelt emotions about this suffering and helping cancer patients.
People come into our clinic for 3 weeks, and they live with us. And we bond with them, and they bond with us. And then they go home and they continue their therapy at home. And so, when you're dealing with that kind of, I don't know what you would call it gravity. That kind of gravity, the perspective on life as you and I know it changes. And, life, we live our lives a lot of the time to satisfy ourselves and be entertained. But when this is happening in front of you, things tend to take on a more serious nature. And I think that's how it's changed me the most, is I don't really live anymore to please myself. I live to save these people's lives, and my staff live to save these people's lives. It's an incredible responsibility, first of all. Like I said, they're coming to us as a last resort. as the last resort of hope to save their lives. And so when I hear the children, what really touches us the most is when we have these young couples come in and they have children. And, you know, they'll have 2, 4, 6-year-old children. The ones you saw were 13, 15, 17, and 18. But Katrina, who was also there with us, she's got a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, I think an 8-year-old. And you know, I mean, when you consider the fact and the gravity of what happens if they don't make it, and who are they going to leave behind, it just makes our job that much more important and that much more vital, you know, to their story. And it's a deep burden for us. We don't take these things lightly. We know what's going on behind the scenes in their life. We know what they're fighting for and what they're living for, and it just takes on that added burden to what we're doing. And quite frankly, you do feel a heavy weight on your shoulders. Not to feel like a martyr or anything. That's not what we do. You know, I mean, that's not how we feel. But it's a sincere burden that we feel when we know, especially when there's children involved, like you experienced. Because, like I said, those children, they know what's going on, and they don't want to lose their parents. Every day. Every day. Every day I feel that burden. But you can't walk away, because nobody in the world knows what we know. And to walk away from that would be walking away from your Creator, which is what you were intended to do.
My family and I went to Peru last summer on a family trip. I'm originally from Peru, so is my husband, and it was the first time that we were taking the kids. And the first place that we stopped was up North Peru, to visit my dad, and he insisted that I would go and see a doctor because I usually have this tendency to break out, and he said, let's go and see a dermatologist up there. And so I did, and so she recommended for me to see an endocrinologist. And so the doctor there checked me completely, and she said, I feel a lump on your neck. And she sent me for an ultrasound, and it was really funny that the radiologist is the one that did the ultrasound. It's not a technician like in the US. So when he was doing the test, the scan, he was really freaked out. He was afraid. And I knew something was wrong then. I walked away from the office, and I decided to put it on hold because we were there for 3 weeks. I came back to the US, and I had a biopsy, and it turned out to be thyroid cancer. The word cancer is usually tied into death, you know, pain, brokenness, oppression. I knew right away that was not me. That's not where God wanted me. And that's why He led me to find it. And, you know, from then on, I don't even know how to call it intuition. I knew I did not want to do anything conventional. Although I didn't know that this whole new world of holistic existed. You know, I didn't know you could cure cancer with non-toxic treatments. But I was, you know, it was the beginning of this new journey of discovery. And that's how it all started. I was told that I needed surgery right away, radiation, and I said no. And it's not that I was afraid, I just knew that it wasn't for me. That's not the path for me to heal. As you see the ocean right here, if we allowed our emotions to lead us in our healing path, we're gonna be going back like the waves, back and forth, right? I don't wanna be like the waves back and forth. I want to be still and continue taking one step at a time into my healing, towards my healing journey, which is my ultimate goal. So when I was first diagnosed, the doctor couldn't tell me whether or not after surgery, cancer could come back. So I chose to follow this non-toxic treatment approach, and It was pretty scary because, again, you're going against the flow. Everyone around you tells you you're crazy. But that was what I decided to do, and I've never done anything like this. I didn't know what to expect, but even the doctors don't know what to expect. They don't know, they can't tell you, there are no guarantees. But I chose this path for me, and it has worked. It's working. So the tumor has shrunk dramatically, and my lab work reflects that the tumor markers have decreased approximately 65% in the past 5 months, which is amazing. And it will continue. It will continue to decrease until it's gone.
Wow, what an episode we had for you today. Now, this was a bit of a roller coaster, I know, but I also know that you've gained a lot of insights through the topics covered and through the incredible experiences of our experts. How amazing it is that the small things in life really mean the most. Perhaps many people are unsuccessful in treating their cancer because they are looking in the wrong places. For instance, nutrients are perceived as small things when in reality they are of paramount importance. And speaking of small, micronutrients are some of the smallest things, but it's these micronutrients that are some of the biggest allies in winning the battle against cancer. You've seen that micronutrients actually aid the body in stopping tumor formation, angiogenesis, which is the formation of new blood supply, metastasis, proliferation, and invasion of cancer, and they even induce apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. You've learned that rather than perceiving cannabis as the devil's weed, maybe we should think of it as heavenly hemp due to its plethora of medicinal uses, and that it's best understood as a friend rather than a foe when it comes to cancer treatment. You've again seen the devastating reality of the brave heroes that have undergone heartache and loss, sacrificing their own personal assets and security for the sake of their patients' lives. Missing peptides like antineoplastones have successfully been used to heal a multitude of so-called terminal cancer patients. And finally, you've seen that no matter what your background or family lineage, you are not destined to end up with the same disease as your parents. You've seen that the science of epigenetics proves you have the ability to choose your own path and cultivate your own health and healing irrespective of your genetic predisposition. We have good news for you in this moment. You are free, and the prison of death and disease is behind you. You and your loved ones are free to step outside the cancer box, which is full of lies and confusion, into a beautiful world which beckons you with all the things you desire and deserve. Wow, we covered a lot of ground in this episode, but we know from experience in our last documentary, the next episode, the final episode, is going to be the most inspiring, and it's going to give you hope. Why? Because the next episode is totally dedicated to sharing cancer conqueror stories, and that's what you're going to get. So thanks for joining us, and I know we're going to see you again tomorrow. Have a great evening. God bless all of you.
This is why this is important, that this series that you're doing, Ty, is being kept alive, and I just can encourage everyone who's seeing that show that you spread it and help Ty to get his message around the world and not only tame this beast, but eliminate it, not by violence, but by education.
I really respect what Ty Bollinger does because after experiencing this pain, after going through all this suffering by losing loved ones, he has this courage and strength to stand up and talk to so many people around the world and learning by himself, because every time he interviews someone, it's a additional knowledge for him how to help his family and loved ones and everybody who can listen this beautiful series. So that's why we have to do this. We don't have to sit in our small offices just helping one by one patients. This is great, but if we have the opportunity to educate millions, when we have the opportunity to stand up without any fear that someone will be jealous or someone will say that no, that's not what medical school teaches, that's not what pharmaceutical company wants you to know. If we have this strength, if we have this willpower to empower everyone and courage to spread this message, I think this is very, very important. I think that everyone who has something to say to help others supposed to stand up and say it. Some opinions can be, not acceptable by people, but it's good to know. It's good to know. That's why we send patients after our scan for other opinions. Don't trust only us. Educate yourself. We want you to go to another doctor and listen what that doctor will say to you, and third doctor and fourth doctor, and then combine that knowledge together. Then go to social media, watch this series, and make your choice, because this is your body, this is your health, and this is your life.
The global quest is saving lives. What Ty has done is something that no many others have attempted so far, making sure that the truth is out there, the truth is available. There's a lot still to be learned, to be explored, but by and large, by giving some tools, and educational tools, some motivational tools to people, the fear factor all of a sudden goes. And if the fear is out of the way, well, there's a lot of room for a true quest and a true recovery and a true healing. So my advice is, don't hesitate to own the series. It can absolutely save your lives, save the lives of your loved ones, save the lives of somebody you know. Like I said before, 1 in 3 people will be diagnosed with cancer or has already been diagnosed with cancer. So it makes a lot of sense to own the series. Have a look, take a look, you'll be very amazed, very impressed.
When you choose to own the truth about cancer, a global quest, you play a huge role in saving millions of men, women, and children that are suffering and dying from cancer, a terribly misunderstood and mistreated disease. Your support allows us to continue on our life's mission to eradicate cancer once and for all. Our mission is not only to help you and your family by arming you with the truth, but it's to share the truth with as many people as we can across the globe each and every day. Please consider joining this movement and supporting the mission by choosing to own this docuseries and by sharing it with your family, your friends, your community, and your church. Together, we can make a difference and we will save lives. Plus, a portion of each and every sale gets donated to cancer charities that are doing real cancer research and are actually helping cancer patients each and every day. Simply click the banners below to join the movement and support our mission. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.